Welcome back. With home prices soaring across Canada, many people have chosen to invest in real estate abroad, including three of our experts, Micheal, Lambie, Suzanne, Dimma, and Lorraine Simpson. Now, the best part, they're here today to share what they've learned with all of you. So, Micheal, let's start with you. You've purchased property in Indiana and Illinois. What do our viewers need to know about purchasing in the U.S.?
Well, one important fact to remember is that every state has their own rules and guidelines and taxation. So it's not just because you purchase one state, it's not going to be applicable in another state. So you really want to make sure you understand that state and the laws there. So the best way to do that is create a team. You want to work with a lawyer in that area and an accountant in that area who understands the tax implications and legal implications of owning in that area. During the U.S. recession, years ago, like over 10 years ago, prices were at an all-time low. So myself and a couple of business partners, we bought a few properties out there. And what we did is we were able to kind of ally ourselves with people who knew what was going on and directed us what states to go and where to buy and when it's going to be the easiest for us to kind of navigate, being it that we live here and we weren't going to be living in the States.
Key insider info there makes a lot of sense. So how did you set up your business in a way that minimized your concerns as a landlord living in a whole different country?
Right. So what we did is we actually set up holdcos. So we actually set up corporations in the States, in that state there, which then bought the properties that we own. And what that does is it creates a bit of a buffer, a separation between us as individuals and the people who are renting. Different states are really friendly when you own a company that you don't even have to live there. Some say you have to, the owners of the companies or the majority owners of the companies have to live in that state, and some don't, which is why we wound up in the states that we were. So once you do all that background information, and then you get yourself a real estate team and you find the right property for your area.
Okay, very interesting. So each one is owned by a different corporation, and all the corporations are American corporations, which help create that little bit of a distance between you and your tenants. Very interesting. Okay, Suzanne, I'm heading over to you now because you didn't just purchase abroad, you also renovated your house in Mexico, which I am following. It's beautiful.
Oh, yay.
What was that like?
Oh, I'll be honest, Trace, it was a nightmare. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. It was very challenging, extremely challenging. As a designer, being able to design in a completely new aesthetic, it was really exciting for me. I love that. But there's a lot of cultural differences for how things operate. The way you might run your design business here is very different there. Everything does take longer. And then on top of it, we began our reno just before COVID hit and the pandemic. So suddenly we couldn't go down at all. So I call it my virtual reno because I did most of it on WhatsApp. You know, I got really adept at working on the app, doing little sketches and just communicating in text. So that was really difficult, to be honest, but it all turned out.
Okay, so you must have had to like silence the control freak in yourself, or maybe you're just like easy go and let it flow. I don't know if I would be able to do that. So you were able to let it go and it happened.
I let it go, but not really. I was still a control freak. You should see the number of text messages I have in WhatsApp. It's probably over 10,000 messages. So I was still controlling, but you do have to let it go a bit. It's just like if you're not on site, things happen, like things slow down and you just can't be in control the same way.
I feel ya. Okay, so what was it like facing the legalities, the taxes, and more, and all in a different language? Because the language barrier is the other situation, right?
The language barrier is it's a big deal. So I've gotten better at Spanish. I'm still not great, but I'm getting better. It's really important to try and speak the language. I think that's a big deal, is to make the effort to communicate in Spanish. You always have your Google app to be able to translate on the fly if you need to. But I think having a community, just like we were talking about before, is really important. There's a huge expat community in San Miguel de Allende where we're located. There's a local newspaper run by expats where everybody shares information. There's a Facebook page as well. And those are all great resources for finding out any information that you need. One of the things people need to know is that unless you have temporary or permanent residency in Mexico, foreigners aren't actually allowed to have a bank account, and they can't have a mortgage. So you have to buy your property in full payment at the beginning. So at some point you're going to need temporary or permanent residency. It's not complicated to get it. I'm in that process right now. It's really going to the consulate in Canada, and then you have to go to somewhere in Mexico. You have to make an appointment there to go through all the paperwork at some point. The number one thing I think also you need to think about is for taxing is that if you're shipping items from North America to Mexico and you don't have permanent or temporary residency, you will get a big tax that way. So that's why I'm going through the residency application right now. You have to have a will. That's a really important thing because if you pass away and you don't have a will, the government will give your property to the local university. So you have to make sure you have your will in place. But in terms of taxes, property taxes are super low. Some properties don't have any taxes, and it really doesn't impact your income tax in Canada. The only time it does is, of course, if you rent out the property and are generating income, then you just declare that just like normal, and it increases your taxes and you get taxed at that rate. So it's pretty straightforward, actually. And I just love the culture, the color, the people, the food. It's challenging, but it's totally worth it.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And great tips there, Suzanne. Thank you for that. Lorraine, over to you now. You didn't just buy one property, you bought 5 houses in Ireland, and it looks beautiful. So why did you decide to invest in Ireland?
Okay, so I've always been a bit of a real estate buff, okay? So every time we go away, I always look in the windows of the realtors to see what the prices are. And then we went to Ireland and it was love at first sight. And I found a property that was super, super cheap, and it was at auction. Now, thing is about auction, you've got to be very careful with auction because you have to buy in full, there's no mortgage. You're also locked in. So if you actually purchase it and you win the auction and you choose to pull out, you're going to lose your hefty deposit. So you're going to be careful about that. So the next thing we know, I'm buying these properties. It's one property with 5 little cottages on it. Now, we didn't actually see them, but I would definitely recommend you go and see them. You do your due diligence. You check everything out before you agree to purchase, because if you don't, as I said, you could be in a little bit of a trouble. But it's a good time to buy in Ireland at the moment because there's loads of things like, for example, all the documents are in English. The law is very fair because it's international law, and it's like British law. It's pretty much the same. The euro is fantastic. And unlike Michael, we want to short-term rent our properties. So actually we're going to be there to rent them out. We bought it, it's in the middle of a beautiful area. It's in rural Ireland in County Clare. Prices are very, very affordable, and at auction even better. And the short-term rental market in Ireland is on fire. Now, a lot of extensive renovation is needed, but that's okay because Keith is a builder, so he's going to do a lot of it himself.
Oh, I've seen some of the work that Keith has done. In fact, the entire family out there working together, like the Von Trapps or something. It's very cute. It looks beautiful, and we can't wait to follow your full reno journey, Lorraine. Thank you also to Michael and Suzanne for sharing your tips for buying abroad. We love to hear it. And if anyone watching has more questions for these 3, or actually any of our experts, they're a gold mine. Remember, send them in anytime. Just email us at submissions@cityline.tv.